Welcome back to another episode of the Heavy Matters podcast. The year's 2022, 2021 is behind us, and I'm here today doing an interview solo. You may remember the last interview I did was with a band called Or from Sydney, Australia. Today I'm joined by another band from Sydney, Australia, and the band is called Yanomamo, and I'm joined by Jason, who's with me in Sydney. Jason, thank you for joining me on this, miserable morning here. I'm sure it's very nice in Australia, is it?
Thanks for having me, Joey. It's hot as fuck here. Just spent the last week sweating my fucking ass off.
Good.
Humid and horrible, and raining, and it's been awful.
I've spent the last week in pissing rain, so I don't feel sorry for you at all. So cool. So Jason, Yanomamo is the name of your band. You reached out to me by email and saying check us out, which I duly did, and here we are now. So Yanomamo, first of all, the name, where does it come from and what does it mean?
So to go right back, so we've been around for about 11 years, and to go back when we were putting the band together, our original singer and I had a mutual interest in like old B-grade horror films.
Okay.
And we were particular fans of an old film called Cannibal Holocaust.
Yes.
And in that movie, the tribe were an indigenous tribe from the Amazon called the Yanomamo.
Okay.
We jammed a couple of times, and we were about to record, and we're sort of trying to come up with a name, and I honestly didn't give a shit about the name. I just wanted to play the music, and he just said, "Oh, what about Yanomamo?" And at first I thought it was like something Japanese. So I had no idea what it was. And then I was like, and he goes, "You remember Cannibal Holocaust?" I'm like, "Oh, of course." I'm like, "Yeah, that's cool. Let's do that." Like, not many bands start with the letter Y and it sounds different and people have trouble pronouncing it. So it's perfect.
It's great to have a band who takes stuff from films or pieces of art and stuff like that. You don't really see it much these days. So it's nice to have a backstory.
Yeah, we've always been sort of influenced by that sort of stuff, and like even watching those old horror films sometimes, like just you hear the soundtrack and you think, oh, that's a really cool sort of chord progression they've used in the soundtrack, and you kind of go off and you kind of use that and transform it into something else. But I do that all the time. Like I'm influenced by everything.
Okay, very interesting. And so are you the main songwriter, Jason, in the band?
I've probably written most of the stuff. Like there's two original members of the band left, me and our bass player Clarence. We've had two singers and like 6 drummers. Just like every band has a member they can't hold on to, and for us it's always been drummers. Luckily, we've always been able to replace our drummers very easily. Our last drummer, Jack, who is in he's a crazy talented guy. He's in another Australian band called Burial Pit, and he plays guitar in that. And that's his. You heard of those guys?
I'm actually speaking to him next week.
You talking to Jack?
I don't know who I'm talking to yet. Oh, actually,
it's Jack.
Yeah, it is Jack. Yeah,
it is Jack. Yeah, so Jack's our old drummer,
right?
And when he's from Melbourne originally, when he moved to Sydney, we were looking for a drummer, and he contacted. I think he had an ad like out, and I contacted him and said, and he's like, "Oh, I was listening to you guys yesterday, and we jammed, and it just gelled." And he joined the band, and he was with us for a solid, like almost 5 years, I think. And he's one of these multi-talented, freakish musicians, right?
Those annoying people who can do everything.
Yeah, annoying as fuck. So when he came on board, he and I then kind of became the main songwriters, and we worked in different ways. He would present completed songs, which was great, and I tend to present more pieces and ideas, and then like to jam them out. But when Jack was in the band, it was fantastic to have that. And our bass player Clarence writes a few songs here and there, but I would say the lion's share of our catalogue was written mainly by me, jamming out with the band. But our last EP, Jack wrote 3 of the songs and I wrote 1 of them. I guess we've got a bunch of new stuff, and I've written like 7 new songs. And I know Tyron said he's got 3, and he keeps promising to send them through, but never does. But we'll get around to it.
Yeah, there's because obviously, well, first of all, let's talk about the music because I know you have your hands in a fair few pies in the music scene. So, musically for Yanomamo, I you describe it as sludge doom, and
Yeah.
certainly when I listened to it, a few bands that sprung to mind from my end were an English band called Raging Speedhorn. I'm not sure if you've heard of them before.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, but also there's a lot of that no LA sort of bands like I Hate God,
Yeah.
Crowbar, Down to an extent. Would that be
Yep.
sort of a fair assessment of for people who've not heard you before? Would that be a fair
Yeah,
assessment?
yeah, absolutely. Look, when I formed the band, I just wanted to be an Iron Monkey, basically. you know. So I've been a fan of Iron Monkey for so long. So I went, and I used to just jam along to their songs at home, and so when sort of kicked this band off, what I had in my head was like a cross between Bongzilla and Iron Monkey. So that real stonery metal, but with the aggression of Iron Monkey. Because that's kind of what blew me away about Iron Monkey was just, they were heavy and groovy as fuck, but the aggression that came through in the music was just, it was palpable. You could hear it in Johnny's voice. You could hear it in the drums and the guitar riffs and stuff. And I think, even though I think our band's changed a lot over the years, particularly as I've gotten better as a songwriter and a guitar player, but I think we've always been able to maintain that aggression. And I've had people say to us that you guys are almost you have a hardcore element to it, and that probably comes from me growing up just being obsessed with bands like Dead Kennedys and Black Flag and stuff, and never really being that metal guy that got into I always appreciated bands like Slayer, but they're not the kind of band I would sit down and listen to, or Metallica or something like that. So I've always come from that kind of punk hardcore background rather from the metal background. But as soon as I started to hear bands like I Hate God and Iron Monkey in the 90s, I was just like, oh, that's the sound. That's for me. This is like a culmination of everything that I love.
Yeah. Because when I listen to now, correct me if I'm wrong. You've one full length EP album. Is that right?
Yeah, one full length album and a bunch of EPs and singles. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was going through your back catalogue, I think the first one is, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. The first EP was Maggot. Is that right?
Yes.
So when I tried to do it in reverse chronological order. So start at the earliest and work my way forward. And Maggot, especially on the song Baphomet, at the end of it has the bass line is very Sabbathy, which I got out of that, which obviously is fairly linked with that doom scene. But then as I went through the albums or EPs, like the riff in Knights of Malta, which is from Capitolo Jew.
Yes.
Yeah. Like that's a real sort of chugger riff in there, like tinging on that hardcore. And then I was listening to No Sympathy for a Rat, and that album for me, or EP, whatever you want to call it, it seems a lot more darker and heavier than the original stuff, especially on what was the song I was listening to? The Offering. That snarling vocal is a lot different to your earlier stuff, which I assume is where you're getting this, like you said, the hardcore sort of elements from.
So it's interesting because our singer that we have now, Scotty, who's been on board, who's also the singer in Burial Pit, by the way.
Jeez, I should have just done it all at the same time. I've got everyone into a room.
So Scotty's been with us now so he came on board just after Jack joined, and we kicked our old singer out for being a dick.
Don't sit on the fence with that one, Jason, all right? Just say it how it is, all right?
So, very, very different. So for me, Tony, the original singer, he drew a lot from guys like, Johnny Morrow from Iron Monkey, because that's kind of where we were coming from. But so, Scotty walked in, and he's this gigantic human being. He's probably like 6'3" and 105 kilos. And he walked in, and he's despite his size, he's the quietest dude you'll ever meet. And then he walked in, we met him, and he's this kind of shy guy from this small coastal town near Sydney. And we're like, oh, so, let's just have a jam and you throw some lines down over the top. So we sort of started jamming on some new stuff we had, and he opened his mouth and started singing, and we're just like, holy shit. The man's he's just an absolute monster, and he can do the highs, he can do the lows, he can do the Cookie Monster, he can do whatever the song needs. And to be honest, when he came from a background of growing up, because he's a bit younger than me and Clarence, so he comes from a background of that deathcore sort of stuff, and he was kind of familiar with sludge and doom stuff, but he goes, look, I'll be honest with you, that's not my background, but it's cool. I like it, and I'm kind of keen to push it a little more. So we basically, asked him to join the band on the spot. And he did, and it was kind of the best thing we've ever done, because he's not just a great vocalist, but he's actually, when I write some music, I'll send it to him, and I'll be like, sometimes I'll just give a song that I write a name, like some dark name, like a new one I've written is called Liar's Remorse, a kind of a pun on buyer's remorse. And I've kind of came up with that name because there just seems to be a whole lot of lying going on in the world at the moment, from our leaders, and they're shameless about it. And it's like, they're only remorseful when they get caught out. So I'll kind of do that, and I'll send it off to him. So I kind of plant a seed in his head about what I think the song's about, and then he writes about that. And he's, the lyrical melodies that he comes up with are really great. So it's just been a really great thing for us, and it's kind of taken the band. We started out with that Iron Monkey Bongzilla thing in mind, but and you can hear through the discography, we're still trying to capture our live sound. That first Maggot EP is so raw, and it captured us at a time when we were, when I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do as a guitar player, and was intimidated by the other guys I was playing with because they were so talented and all this sort of stuff. And then as we've gone through, we've kind of, it's morphed. And I think the No Sympathy for a Rat EP is probably the closest we've caught to capturing our live sound.
Right.
And hopefully next time on the new stuff that we're doing, we'll be able to capture it properly. But yeah, it's been 11 years of just, as I said, kind of maintaining. For me, the key ingredient in what we do is that aggression. Because, when I write stuff, I'm writing about stuff I'm pissed off about, and I just, the riffs I come up with sometimes I'm not sure if they're going to work, and then as soon as I put a drum beat to them, it kind of clicks, and I'm go, yeah, okay, that's cool. And it's got to have that kick, that bite to it, that kind of, I don't know, maybe it's the thing I got from just listening to years of Black Flag, particularly the My War album. That for me was just so influential in so many ways, but in particular, like doing what you want to do, because Black Flag pissed so many people off back in the day with that album.
Sure.
They were this hardcore band, and then all of a sudden they came out with this album that had these 7-8 minute songs on it, and people were like, what the fuck is this? And they were unapologetic, man. They used to go out and play those songs live, and people used to throw shit at them, and they were like, fuck, this is what we do,
But that's the whole point of metal, from my point of view. It is such a rebellious form of music.
Agree.
Like, I remember buying a Iron Maiden t-shirt which said, it had Eddie on the front and a Spitfire, and on the back it said, shoot down the fuckers. I was 11 or 12, and I wore it at home, and my mum was furious, but it was that rebellious thing which, and that's the beauty of this, like, and especially in this day and age now, I think metal seems to have come almost a full cycle, where we've had the last decade or 2-3 decades of metal, and everyone's ideas not seem to be stale, but bands are now starting to come up with new things. You've got this new black gaze, you've got death gaze, all these subgenres. And just coming back to your point about the Maggot EP, you saying, it wasn't the sound you liked. I actually really like that production. I don't want to call it lo-fi because I think that's probably disrespectful to the producer or the way it was recorded. But I think, and especially when the kind of music you're writing, sludge, doom, whatever,
Yeah.
it is notoriously, I only use inverted commas, loose. And
Yeah.
you know,
That EP is so loose. When I listen back to it now, I'm like, I kind of cringe at some parts of it. Just you can hear the wrong notes, and you can hear just so much stuff. But I guess what you're also hearing when you listen to that is a band that stumbled. Four guys that stumbled onto something cool that all got along and wrote this music and just wanted to get it out and were just really
impatient.
eager about what they were doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And eager to just to keep going and find their way.
But that's like most bands that, the story, let's just take Nirvana for argument's sake. They just got together, couldn't play their instruments, and ended up releasing one of the biggest selling alternative albums of all time. That's the beauty of these things. But I wanted to discuss, because you said at the start about band members, you've had a bit of seems like a Megadeth revolving door, at this stage of members. And I was watching the Berserker, one of your Australian bands. So I was watching their documentary, the making of their first album, and Luke was signed to Earache, I think, and he flew to Canada to get these musicians. It didn't work out. Ended up coming back to Australia and found some people who didn't really understand it, but they tried their best.
Yeah.
Is there a lack of not talent, but is there a lack of musicians in Australia for the kind of music that you're playing, or the likes of Burial Pit, etc., etc.?
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually. So, especially having been sort of doing in this kind of underground metal scene in Australia now, I've been doing it for like 15 years. I was in another band before Yanomamo, yeah, it is a very. Have you ever been to Australia?
I have, yep.
Yeah. Okay. So Australia, for people that haven't, I guess Australia is it's a huge continent, but it's very densely populated around the outside, and in the middle is uninhabitable desert, which will kill you in a heartbeat. So we're kind of victims of our geography in a way, in that if we want to go and play a show in the next state, we've got to drive 12 hours.
Yeah.
It's not like in the States where you drive 12 hours in the States, you can probably go through 5 states, right? So I guess you have cities like Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, and Canberra, which is a very, the nation's capital, very small. It's got a very vibrant underground metal scene. Some of the best underground metal bands this country's ever produced come from Canberra. So I'm talking about bands like, Pod People, who were the first Australian band ever signed to Relapse, 25 years ago. So check out bands like Pod People, and they're just prolific. And the guys from Canberra, they're in 7 or 8 different bands at a time, and all these bands are just like top shelf. What I would call world class bands. If you put these bands on the European festival circuit for like a summer, they would end up headlining them. They're just that good.
Yeah.
So I guess you come to the Sydney scene, and kind of it's a sort of situation where everyone knows everyone or knows of everyone. So, when a band is looking for a band member, the call sort of goes out. And we found our latest drummer, Brendan, who's been with us for probably 6 months now. He was in another band called Hawkmoth, so we knew him. And when I was just sitting at home one day trying to find a new drummer, I was like, oh, Hawkmoth split up. Maybe I'll just shoot Brendan a message. So I shot him a message, and he was like, oh man, you know what? I was just thinking yesterday I should get back into a heavy band. Let's jam. And we jammed for 20 minutes, and I just looked around and said, dude, you want to be in the band? And he's like, yeah, fucking oath.
Nice.
It just, that's the kind of scene it is here, where, you know people, of people, and you just kind of say to them, are you interested? Let's have a hit. And if it works out, everyone's cool,
Yeah. It sounds like, to me, from what I'm reading from you, it's not a massive pool of
No,
people,
definitely not.
but it seems like there's a lot of people, like you said, Jack and Scott from Burial Pit, who are linking in with you guys. I was speaking to Mark and Matt from Or the other day,
Yeah.
and I
Yep.
think I can't remember, one of them was in another band and sort of like sharing. But that, I mean, that's really nice
Yeah.
to see. And I suppose that's sort of like a community you've got in Australia, because, and you
Yeah, it
are
is.
right, you are right that like if you had these bands going on to the European tours, they would get a lot more attention. And the fact that you are bloody thousands of miles on the other side of the world, you're
I
having
like to
to.
call it. I like to call it the arse end of the world.
Yeah, but you know, you have to rely on your community in
Yeah.
Australia, and
We've got bands here that have gone over and done the European festivals, circuits, and stuff. And it just costs them. They come back
yeah,
and they're like 30 grand in debt.
yeah,
It's great they get exposure and they get known, but at a personal level, it's taxing.
yeah. I mean, the only two that I can think of, as we sit here today, that could do that would be from Australia. Well, the first one's contentious whether they're Australian or not, is AC/DC. Um, but we won't get into that today. And the other one's Parkway Drive. Like, they're the two ones that
Yeah, I recently watched the Parkway Drive documentary. Have you seen that?
it's brilliant.
Oh man, and they come from Byron Bay, which is quite an affluent area on the north coast of New South Wales. Um, and the metalcore thing wasn't something I ever got into, but
Sure.
Anything to do with a music documentary, doesn't matter what band it is, I'll watch it because I just love the details, the intricacies of these people's careers, right? So I tuned into the Parkway Drive one, and by the end of it, I was like cheering for them,
Yeah.
they just did so well, and they did what I said. They went to the circuit, and then at the end of it, they were headlining, these enormous festivals, and just
Well, they headlined
all right.
Wacken in Germany, which is
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
biggest metal festival in Europe, which sort of surprised me because Wacken was notoriously a not a mainstream band festival, if you know what I mean. You
yeah,
would have
yeah.
had.
My girlfriend's actually German, so
Oh, okay.
and she, everyone from Germany knows about Wacken and stuff, and um, when I looked at her brother-in-law knows one of the guys who's involved with putting it on, and
All right.
I was talking to them about it and blah, blah, blah. And then I checked out some of the bills, and there's like pirate metal and Viking metal and all this crazy like proper underground shit, which is awesome. But yeah, for an Australian band to headline that's like crazy.
And like you said, you're not into metalcore. Fair enough. Like everyone in metal has their genre that they don't like. You know.
Yeah, it's not that.
I know this isn't me saying to you. This
No, no,
this.
no, 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 no. I totally get that. It's just like I just want to qualify it saying, and I always do say this to people. It's just like music these days is so readily available
Mhm.
that it's just hard to listen to.
Yeah.
As growing up, if you got a tape or an album or something, you would listen to that thing until the tape wore out, or the record couldn't be played anymore.
Yeah.
And these days you've got it's just like
At your
all these.
fingertips.
Yeah, and like when I was watching the Parkway thing, I was there were riffs that I've heard that were fucking great, but just I guess I'm 50 years old, so I kind of missed that whole metalcore wave. I remember the new metal thing, which kind of turned me off a bit, and I guess stuff like new metal kind of made me retreat back to my safe spaces of Thin Lizzy and Kiss and all the old shit I listened to growing up.
You're really sounding like a stubborn old man right now, Jason. Like,
Yeah, man. Yeah, everyone has their comfort music, right?
yeah, for sure. But no, it's like it's great to hear that you're actually you were cheering from at the end, and one being from Australia, but two also it's not the music that you would readily put on. Like, for example, I love black metal. That's my sort of go-to.
Yeah.
But I've seen Parkway Drive numerous times and are one of the most energetic and fun bands, and they write the most hooky riffs and sing-along
Yeah.
choruses of any band, and it's just nice to see that you're rooting for the guys as well, and you're not like being bitter about them sort of being successful because they're playing metalcore.
fuck no. And I know those guys have been around for a long time, busting their asses and, sleeping on floors and all that sort of shit. They
Yeah.
deserve every accolade and every good thing that's ever happened to them, those guys. You can't help but cheer for something like that,
It's really nice to hear that, Jason, to be honest. Like, it's nice. So your sister's brother knows the guy at Wacken. Have you gotten in there yet to play next year? Oh, your girlfriend's?
Yeah, my girlfriend's brother-in-law, yeah. Look, we've had some interest to play in Japan and New Zealand and stuff. Like, it's hard, we've all got kids and families and stuff. Scott's wife's just had a baby. He's got like a 6-month-old daughter. I've got an 11-year-old son. Clarence has got 2 young girls. It's just hard, man, and we've been doing this 11 years now. So it's kind of at the point where, we've done tours of Australia supporting like Conan and, Black Cobra and Jucifer. And, sleeping on floors when you're 50 years old, man, is really hard. It's like, some of the luster's gone off that kind of lifestyle, but if someone said, if we could get to Europe and do it, I'd do it in a heartbeat, because, and I've always said this about being in a band. For me, it's definitely not about making money, because fuck. It's about experiences for me, the fact it still blows my mind that, I wake up in the morning, I got a notification on my phone that someone in Israel's bought a copy of the album and they want a t-shirt as well. And I'm like, fuck, really?
Yeah.
The fuck? That's wild to me. And things like that, little things like that, that's what makes it worthwhile for me, and as long as I keep getting those notifications on my phone that people want to hear our music and buy our stuff, then I'll keep doing it,
And look, this is one of the reasons why me and Venny set up this podcast, was one, because of our love of metal and, to review bands, but also to give like underground bands the exposure like this, to get it out there, because the mainstream bands, like Metallica, Maiden, Slipknot, they don't need any help. They're well set. Even during this pandemic, they're fine. But like, this is why we want to do it, is we want to give as much exposure to bands, And I've really zoned in on the Australian scene recently. Since I heard Or, I then heard Burial Pit, Yanomamo.
So we're label mates with Huddlemore at the moment, so we're on Block.
Is there anyone you don't know? Like,
and that's the thing about bands in Australia, my band and Huddlemore, and we're very different bands, but we've played shows together, and anytime Huddlemore asks us to play a show, I'm like, absolutely, because those guys, fuck, talk about good musicians in underground metal. Fuck those guys, man.
Their new EP's wicked.
Oh, you stand there and you watch these guys play and you're like, holy fuck.
And this is what I'm loving.
It makes me want to quit guitar when I watch guys like that,
Nah. But no, this is what I mean. Like, Australia is always, like, when I spoke to the guys in Or, Mark and Matt, was saying like Europe and the States is obviously rife with bands. If you just look at like America alone, you can name Slayer, Machine Head, Megadeth, Slipknot, etc. UK, we've got Maiden, Saxon, the list goes on. But Australia, like I said earlier, was only really AC/DC and Parkway Drive, and it's great now that I actually want to do, and I was speaking to the guys from I want to do some sort of feature on Australia and the underground metal scene, because I think it needs to. I personally think there's a lot of unhidden gems. Unhidden gems in there. So hopefully there's something we can look at in the future. But anyway, I forgot what my point was then. You mentioned New Zealand. Oh, and I wanted to say about Ulcerate from New Zealand. That did you listen to that record? Stand, is it their last album? Stare into the Death and Be Still. Ulcerate from
No,
New Zealand. All right, okay.
no.
No, sorry, that was the only New Zealand band I could think of when you said that. But if you want some heavy listening, that's an album to go to.
Yeah. Oh, there's a band from got a really shit memory. Beast Wars from New Zealand are
Okay.
very, very popular. You know, they even had their last. So you know, they're a band that comes to Sydney, and you know, Nate the drummer I know quite well, and he'll call us up and ask us to play with them. But I think their last album like charted in the top 10 in New Zealand.
Wow.
And this is a totally underground band, you know, like, but that kind of sums up New Zealand as well. New Zealand love their, you know, anything that's New Zealand born, you know, all that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
stuff. Yeah, and they do really well. Like, they're just like a kind of doomy rock band from New Zealand, and they fucking kill it.
Beast Wars,
Like,
yeah?
yeah, Beast Wars.
Okay.
Yeah,
Check them out then.
really.
Um, so coming on then to you run a record label. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, it's a
And
very small kind of deal.
Iomium Records?
Iomium Records,
Yeah.
yeah. So obviously,
You weren't just content with Yanomamo being awkward to say. You then had to put a fucking record label like,
yeah.
okay, cool.
So the background to the name is so there were a scientist about 10 years ago discovered a couple of new elements, and he was a metal fan, and he wanted to call one of them Lemium after Lemmy, and he wanted to call the other one
Iomi.
Iomium after Tony Iommi.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, that obviously didn't happen. They didn't accept that. But when I read the story, the two names always stuck in my head. And I always wanted to do a label. I thought about it for ages. And it actually came about because when we did the album Neither Man Nor Beast, which, by the way, will be the only ever full-length album that Yanomamo ever does because I don't like that format.
Okay,
Particularly
we'll come back to that, yeah.
music. Yeah, I think, you know, music like ours is better in 20 to 30-minute hits. You know, I think any longer than that, and, you know, particularly these days, people have a shortened attention span. So I'd rather just hit them with, you know, bursts of music in that thing. Anyway, so I was talking to a couple of labels who were interested because they'd heard our back catalogue, and I was like, hey, we're doing this album. And we kind of got dicked around a bit, you know, like people were like, oh yeah, we might be if you do this, or, you know, blah, 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 blah. And in the end, I said to the guys in the band, you know what? I'm sick of this. I don't want to pander to people. If they want to do it, they want to do it. And I said, you know what? I've been thinking of starting a label for a while. Let's just record the album. I'll put it out on Iomium Records. That's what I'll call it. And we'll go from there. So I guess my idea of running a label came a little bit out of necessity. I was just like, fuck, I don't want to be involved with this nonsense. I just want to put this out. And then once I did that, I was kind of like, well, what do I want to do with this label, right? And for me, the whole idea of the label is it's a way of giving back to this, I guess, to the scene. And what I by no means, it's a one-man show, so I do everything. It's never going to be a prolific thing where I'm pumping out like 6 or 7 bands a year. You know, I want to do niche stuff. Like I've done cassettes so far. I've done a couple of Yanomamo things on vinyl.
Oh, cool.
I did a Melbourne. So I did the Slomatics Yanomamo split on vinyl. I did a band from Melbourne called Warp. I did their Pete from a band in Sydney called Sumeru, who runs a label called Brilliant Emperor. He contacted me and he goes, oh, look, this band's not for me, for my label, because he does like the black metal stuff. But I think it'll be right up your alley. And I listened to it, and like halfway through the first song, I was kind of like, yep. And I contacted them and said, want to do a run of cassettes? And they were like, fuck, blown away. Absolutely. Let's do it. That sold out in like a month. I did 50 cassettes, but I was shipping them to, you know, like Norway and South America. And what I discovered by doing that was there's this insane underground tape scene.
Yeah.
And I knew tapes were making a comeback because the Maggot EP that we did 11 years ago, we only ever released on cassette. And we did it back then. And our singer then wanted to do it because he was quite an agitator, and he goes, it'll piss people off. People will be asking for CDs, and we'll be like, no, you can only have a cassette. And then fast forward sort of 11 years, what I discovered by doing the tape for Warp was there's this crazy want for cassettes.
Yeah.
And which is awesome, and because I love, and it comes from my childhood, I love the physical aspect of music, the cassette and the artwork, or the vinyl and the gatefold sleeve and the lyrics sheet and the credits, and this band uses these guitars and these drum kits, the whole thing. It's not just the music, but it's this stuff that goes with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know where my tape deck's gone. I actually have a tape deck somewhere behind there, but you can see the vinyl stuff, and we often talk about on this show is with the digital streaming, it's a twofold. Like, one, bands don't get the money anymore that they should, but two, it does give you the option to find loads of new music at the same time. Yeah. For me, personally, when we do the podcast, we get offered guest passes, and but we like to support bands. We put our money where our mouth is. If we like something, we buy it. Hence why I have all these records sat behind me. I have a wardrobe full of CDs there. But I just want to come back quickly to about your full length, and you decide to put it through your record label, because record labels these days, well, actually throughout the whole probably music, they don't really seem to have the interest of the artist at heart. And so the record label will say, right, here, Jason, here's $1,000, whatever, go record your album. So that includes you get the production and everything. But at the same time, they've got you by the testicles, to be honest, because if you've got time, targets to hit, etc., etc. So having that, doing it in your own self, or by yourself, sorry, obviously the time isn't an issue. But on the flip side, you are putting your own money into the likes of I assume you're paying for studio time, producers, mastering, mixing, and then on top of that, you've got designing, printing the album covers and all this stuff. So I'm just interested to hear from your point of view, and more from a monetary side, how it affects you running your own label.
Yeah, so definitely the Yanomamo stuff, it covers all of those costs that you talk about. And, I was fortunate enough to meet Luke from Blighttown, who put out our last EP, so I didn't have to worry about any of that. He covered all that. But for, I guess, when I do other band stuff, it's more a fact of, I find out that, and it's from knowing kind of people in the scene as well, and you get in touch with the band and you say, hey, I really like your stuff. And they're about to do for example, Sundowner from Adelaide, who are a really great sludge band here. I know Mark Page, their guitarist, quite well from playing in Adelaide and stuff. And I found out he was in this band, and I heard it, and he sort of sent me a release of it. And I was just like, fuck, this is awesome. I want to help you guys out. And for me, that's what the label's about. It's about, as I said before, giving back, but helping bands just get some exposure. So they paid for the recording and all the mastering and the vinyl release that they did. But I said, hey, look, I know I talked to him about the underground tape thing, and I said, look, I want to do a tape because you're going to reach a whole other audience with the tape, and people are going to buy it because it's because it's a tape, and because it's sludge. There's an underground market for that.
Yeah.
And I'm talking like, based on my experience with the Warp tape, I'm talking like, South America, Israel, Norway, Sweden, other side of the world from Australia. And you're right. Personally, the financial outlay for me, do I make a profit? I doubt it. I don't really look into it, to be honest. Do I cover my costs? I probably come close, and that's fine for me. Because as I said before, I don't play music to make money, and at the same time, I don't do this label to make money either. It's a really I get great satisfaction from doing the label, but fuck, I don't make any money from it.
Yeah, and that's fair enough, and that's really, great to hear that you are doing that. But at the same time, you do have, like, rent, I assume, or mortgage, whatever, to pay. You've got kids and stuff.
Yeah,
So
I've got a family, and yeah.
at some point it has to sort of, balance it up. But so I'm just trying to. So you basically, am I right in saying, as the record label, have you anyone actually signed to the label, as in, like?
No.
Okay, right. So am I right in saying you're sort of like a distributor, sort of go between? Is that fair to say?
It's definitely more of a distro model at the moment, in
Right.
the fact that I don't talk to bands and say, hey, jump in the studio, I'll cover this cost, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
It's more like, hey, I know you've got a release coming out. I really like what you're doing, and I want to help you guys be heard. I want to, how can I do something for you guys to get your music out there and help you be heard? And look, you're doing an album. How are you releasing it? Are you doing vinyl? Are you doing CDs? Are you doing tape? Where's the gap I can plug for you to help you out?
And do any bands turn around and say, because, like, obviously record labels, as we've said, notoriously about making money, don't really care about the artist. When you approach bands, sometimes does it sort of seem to them like you're trying to make a profit off them? Do you know what I mean?
Sometimes, yeah. Like I've had a couple, and I appreciate it. Like you've got someone coming to you wanting to do something with your art, and I guess the thing I let them know is, hey, look, I'm not like a bunch of people. I'm one guy. I'm lucky in the fact that I've been in the scene for like 15, 16 years, and I've been in one band that's pretty well known for about 11. So, most people, once I say, what I do and who I am, they're aware of me, which is nice to have now. But I just let them know. I'm just straight up with them. I'm one guy. I play in this band. I just like helping people out. I wish 10 years ago someone would have approached me and asked us to put a tape out and fill the gap. And and I think the nice thing is that what I'm actually, because all I ever do is I just, like I said before, I'm not ever going to be prolific just pumping out stuff from bands. I put out stuff that I really like and think people need to hear more of,
Yeah.
And that's the kicker for me. And as long as I keep hearing cool stuff, I'll keep doing it. But you're right. Your question is a good one around, are bands wary? And the short answer is yes, and I think they should be. Because underground, fuck. Anyone who wants to take advantage of underground metal bands should just be killed.
Well,
it's just, and I know it's happened before. I know Iron Monkey got fucked over by their, what's that fucking label, the UK one?
Earache,
yeah, and they're still making money off Iron Monkey, and Justin Greaves is struggling to pay his rent to this day.
Yeah.
They get nothing. They're selling hundreds of T-shirts a year with the label on it, and to me, taking advantage of people in underground metal bands is just, it's unconscionable.
There's I don't know if you're on Twitter or social media at all, but okay, so I'll get your handle after. But there's a lot of stuff in there which really doesn't sit well with me. Is there'd be like outlets like for us, let's just say Heavy Matters for argument's sake, that are saying, "Oh, Jason, like if you contact me and say, Jason, Chris, sorry, let's do you want to interview us?" And they're saying, "Oh yeah, but I mean it's going to cost you 50 quid or 100 quid to get it." Do you know, and that's just fucking wrong.
Or you've got to sell your vinyl and a T-shirt or something.
Yeah. And funny actually, because I was speaking to this Upstate Records in New York, and Mario, really nice guy, sent me on this EP, EP of this hardcore band. But anyway, he said, "Oh, cheers, thanks so much. Like I can send you a CD if you want." And I was like, "Look, mate, we're not here to, if we like something, we'll buy it. Like I said before, but there's no way, like you said, like if someone's coming to you and saying, love what you do, but we'll get you in our, I don't know, website or whatever, but you have to pay us 50, 100 quid. Like, fuck that. Like, this is like, and you are right in that sense. There's a lot of people out there who, not just record labels.
No, well, there's the whole YouTube thing as well. Apparently, there's some YouTube channel called Stoned Meadow of Doom,
Right.
that charges bands to put their stuff on there, and there was a whole thing blew up online about it. I saw a while back. This guy, can't remember his name, but he was charging bands to put their stuff on YouTube, and then if they didn't want to do it, he was kind of harassing them and writing them off online. All
No.
this, yeah, just it's just like it's parasitic, that sort of stuff. It's like it just goes against everything that.
Like bands are struggling enough as it is. Like to get their stuff out.
As I said before, it's not like any of our bands are making a lot of money or any money at all. For me, it's as I said before, it's about the experience and the fun and so any money I spend on our band, I just view it as an investment. Like it's not an investment that's going to pay off, but it's an investment in my happiness. If that makes sense, you know what I mean?
Sure,
like it's
your pension.
It's what I love to do, and it's my hobby. And if it costs me money, it costs me money.
I mean, obviously, I feel like I should just caveat that previous bit of, if your band is promoting something that is, and I'm not going to say it, but that sort of, well, the Nazi stuff, I will say it, but like that sort of shit, then obviously there's no place for that promotion. I'll just caveat with that. So I'll just caveat that before I'm cancelled. But just coming back to your the point you made about not doing another full length. Yeah. Very interesting, because I have to admit, when you contacted me and said, look, do you want to have a chat? I was like, yeah, absolutely. Never heard the band before. Went onto your back catalogue and I saw all these. I mean, I don't know how many releases you have on Spotify, but there was a lot, and I was like, shit, I've got like a week to listen to all this. And then when I saw the EPs, I was like, this is great. And also at the same time, it gave me a great passage into your evolution as a band. Starting at Maggot all the way up to the full length. Down, I think Phil Anselmo now actually says he only does EPs because, and I think it's due to the same reason as you've said, people don't have the attention span. And it's funny, the album length has been something that's been on social media recently. People whinging about 80 plus minute albums, double albums, things like that. Look, at the end of the day, like, okay, so full disclosure here, Iron Maiden, one of my favourite bands of all time, and when they released Senjutsu, the recent one, and the Book of Souls, I was like, do I need this Maiden? No. Am I happy with it? Absolutely, because I've got more Maiden, And look, at the end of the day, it's all opinionated, this music. Like, if you don't want to listen to this album, if it's too long, fine, move on. It's not for you. You don't have to let the world know about it. But I do, on the other flip side, agree that, and this is no disrespect to your scene of music, because sludge and doom wouldn't be my first go-to. But I agree that if you turned to me and said, right, we're doing a double album of Yanomamo, it's going to be an hour and 30 minutes, I would be, Jason, we've just met, but I think that might be a bit much.
Yeah. Let's sit down, let's have a chat.
Let's have a look sit in the front of the mirror, have a look at yourself.
Yeah, I think the thing that kind of, I've been thinking it ever since we kind of did the album, and then I think the thing that cemented it for me was we had some lockdowns here in Sydney, obviously as a result of the coronavirus, and then there was no live music for like 8 months. We couldn't play shows because everything was shut.
Just going to stop. Sorry, Jason, I just want to interrupt you there. You didn't have live music for 8 months. We haven't had it for 2 years. So don't sit there and feel sorry, all right? Right, carry on. Sorry.
So then when shows started up again, we were allowed to do shows, but everyone had to be seated. There was no singing. Not that anyone sings along anyway. But anyway, it was weird. So we got asked to do a couple of shows in the style that we'd never done before. So he wanted, and I guess it was a sign of the times with the coronavirus as well. We were to do 2 1-hour sets, one at 6 p.m. and one at 9 p.m.
Like a matinee.
We've never done a 1-hour set in our 11 years of being a band. So we're like, fuck, how do we play an hour? Look, it was great. People had a great time. We enjoyed it. But fuck it was tough. But what it kind of, I was just like, you know what? An hour is a long time to have a dude yelling at you and guitars, bass, and drums just fucking pummeling you. You know, it's not like Iron Maiden where it's, you know, it's gallopy and you've got the full show and, you know, those guys are showmen, you know what I mean? Like, it's a thing, and it's, you know, we're just a band that's trying to cave your skull in, right? And to have that for an hour, you know, is a lot. It's a lot. And, you know, as a band, I love playing half-hour sets.
Yeah.
Maybe 40 minutes if we headline, whatever. And I just think, you know, that translates to me to a format of releases, which is an EP. You know, probably 5 songs max. When you start to talk about 5, 6, 7, 8-minute songs, you know, let's just keep it short and sharp. I'd rather put something out and have people wanting more than put something out and people turning it off halfway through.
Yeah, for sure. I've just got this image now of a Yanomamo show with everyone sitting down like in a theatre and someone coming out on stage and going, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Yanomamo," and everyone sat down with like champagne flutes and just going like, "Yeah, well played."
We hit that first chord and all the champagne flutes.
Yeah. And just everyone gets up. I think we're in the wrong venue, dear.
Yeah,
let's move that.
Yeah, that was a funny experience. But, you know, again, as I said before, you know, for me, it's all about the experience. Just having done that is another tick in a box, right? It's like, you know, yeah, we did 2 1-hour sets in a night. And it was, will we do it again? Probably not, but we did it, you know?
Yeah, credit to you. Listen, before we head off, I just have one question which I like to ask all of our guests and put them on the spot a bit. Any bands from the UK or Europe that you're really enjoying at the moment that people may not have heard of or may have heard of?
Yeah. When I think of UK, it's always Iron Monkey for me, you know, and that's Iron Monkey. But again, you know, we talked about it before before we came on. Slomatics from Belfast. A band I've always admired and to me kind of held up. And, you know, we toured Australia with Conan the first time they came out. And John told me about Slomatics and said, you know, if it wasn't for Slomatics, Conan would not exist.
Wow.
He said you know, I heard Slomatics and I wanted to be in Slomatics, so I started Conan.
That's high praise indeed.
Yeah, and then I went. So he went back to the UK after the tour, and he spoke to the guys in Slomatics. And one day I'm sitting down, my phone buzzes, and a message from David from Slomatics, and I'm just like, what the fuck? And he's like, hey, I was just chatting to John from Conan, and he kind of recommended you guys after he toured with you, and just wanted to let you know I really dig what you do. And I'm like, holy fuck, man! I'm like, it's wild. Like, you know, to get a message like that from someone that you've been listening to for 10, 15 years and really admire and all this sort of stuff. And David and I have been in touch now. You know, we talk all the time online. You know, we geek out on gear and shit. And I talk to him about, you know, we talk about our Mad Amps and what pedals he's using at the moment and all this sort of stuff. So, you know, that split that we did with him just came about. I was just like, fuck, you know, we want to do a split. And I was trying to think of who to do it with. And I was like, maybe I should just ask David. You know, they'll probably say no because, you know, they're a much bigger band or whatever. And I asked him and he's straight on the spot. He just goes, yeah, absolutely, let's do it.
That's fucking close.
And I'm like, oh, man, fuck, really? Really? Are you serious? You're fucking with me? He's like, no, let's do it. So yeah, for me, it's an experience, a highlight of someone that you really admire, sort of admiring what you do, and it blew me away. So back to your original question, Iron Monkey, but definitely Slowmatics. Like I would say to anyone that hasn't heard Slowmatics, fuck, get on that. Amazing stuff. Like such a unique band, highly influential, as I said, the whole Conan thing. Boss Keloid.
Yes.
Fuck, what a band, seriously.
Their latest album was I think it was number 2 on my end of year list. I spoke to, what's his name? Steve, the drummer. Very nice guy.
Right.
And they're a wicked band.
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, and you mentioned them before, like Raging Speedhorn, obviously. Another UK band from Nottingham that I absolutely adore is Moloch.
Oh, yeah.
Moloch. Just depressing, grimy sludge. The best you'll ever hear anyone do it. They remind me a lot of a band from New Zealand that don't exist anymore called Meth Drinker.
What a name!
It's the same thing, it's just this, they do their release and it's just half an hour of bleak, awful, you when you've turned it off, you want to go outside and stand in the sunshine for a while just to re-energize yourself. But they're just masters of what they do.
Well, I've got 2 bands that I'm going to throw at you, as this is our 21st century tape trading sort of thing. So there's 2 bands. One of them, they're called Still, Still, and
I'm writing this down.
Good man. The album title is The 2 Curly Brackets. Do you know? I'll type it in the chat. Yeah. But otherwise, you will not find it. So I've just typed in the chat there. Hopefully, you can see that.
Yep.
And the other band, I don't know if you've heard of them before. They're called Conjurer.
Conjurer, I have heard of them. I haven't heard them.
And their last album, what was it called? Maya, is 100% recommended for you to listen to that, because that has got everything mixed into it. So there's 2 bands for you, Jason. You've given me Beast Wars, Sundown, Slowmatics. I'm going to check those guys out today at some point.
All right. Can I give you a couple more to check out, Australian bands?
Are these on Ionium label by any chance?
No. These are just fucking great bands that we play with.
Fire.
Sumeru, Sumeru.
ERU. Yep.
Potion.
Yep.
Mountain Wizard Death Cult.
Great name. Mountain Wizard Death Cult. Yep.
Yeah, so they do kind of an Amon Ra black metal kind of thing, so I think you might dig it.
Yeah.
Who else we got? Burial Pit you're aware of, Hard on More you're aware of. Yeah, leave it there for now. I've got a list of
Perfect, because we'll talk about what my Australian feature idea is going to be about after we finish this recording, because I want to run past you.
Yeah.
So, but listen, I mean, it's been an hour. We've been chatting. We've talked loads. It's been great chatting to you. I'm loving speaking to you Australian guys. It's great fun. Even though I have to be up mega early, you guys are probably about to start drinking now. No, I joke. I have 2 kids. I've been up since about 6 anyway. So, no, but it's been Jason. Thanks very much for reaching out and chatting to me.
I appreciate it, man.
Best luck with Yanomamo, your band, and Ionium, your record label. No, it's been great, and we'll definitely talk again soon. In the meantime, best of luck with the new material. If you want to send me over any demos, you want me to add some screams or something like that, I'll be happy to be a guest spot. Or I can just have my 2 kids screaming in the background, which would add to that atmosphere.
Well.
Something like that. But no, seriously, listen, Jason, thanks so much, man. It's been a blast talking to you, and enjoy the rest of your Saturday evening. And of course, best of luck with the band in 2022 and for the future.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Cheers, Jason. Talk to you soon.
Cheers.